Alright, here we are, guys. Welcome back to the Snake Eyes Rescue Ace deck. I'm super happy. I was excited for the new Rescue Ace cards to drop, obviously, but they didn't come. We got the Snake Eye cards instead, which obviously make the deck way better. I think it's a really cool deck today. I will show you what the deck can do. It's not really a combo deck, but you could also call it a combo deck. It's kind of mid-rangey and everything revolves around the Rescue Ace Turbulence. By the way, if you want to learn Snake Eye in general, pure Snake Eye, I have a guide that's an hour long. There's everything that you need to know, and then also up on the channel is a video of me playing Snake Eyes in a master rank. So if you want to check that out, go to the right corner there. But we have Rescue Ace Snake Eyes here, and we are still missing two very important cards for the Rescue Ace archetype that really make this thing consistent. But with the new Snake Eye cards, this is already quite consistent. I have put this on the top 5 of my list for the decks that you can climb with this month to reach most easily Master 1 with. So as always in these guides, we will go over the deck list and the most important cards. You can copy this deck list. I will explain in a moment what my thought process behind this is, because the lists out there are more like filled with cards. So you can see I'm running a trim 40 list here. I like it like that, but there are also other lists around there or out there on Master Duel Meta that were pretty successful, running more like they run DD Crow and stuff, and Imperm, which obviously is great. This is one problem of the deck which we will talk about in a moment, and which is also the reason why it's not that strong at this point, because you need to put in a lot of stuff to make it more consistent. So you can't put in a lot of hand traps, unfortunately, but we will talk about this later on. So afterwards I will show you some basic combos, even though one thing has to be said here, there is no such thing as a really basic combo for this deck, because it always depends on your hand. What you first have to understand is this card here, because this card is basically what Rescue Ace wants to do, and this is what Rescue Ace wants to do all the time. So let's read it so we can understand what this deck is all about. If you have understood what this card does, then you have understood what the deck wants to do, basically. It doesn't mean that you have understood what every card wants to do, obviously, but let's read the card. Rescue Ace Turbulence in 9 level. We have 3/3, which is quite nice. It's a machine. It's very important for a few other effects. You can banish 2 Rescue Ace cards from your graveyard, special summon this card from your hand. One thing to note here, we will talk about this in a moment, but also the cards here like Alert, Rescue, and Contain, and Extinguish. These are also, this is always said on the card, you treat it as Rescue Ace cards, meaning you can also use them to summon your Turbulence. A special summon this card from your hand. This is not an inherent summon, as indicated by the semicolon here, which means this is an effect. So you are basically saying, if you would play this in real life, you would be saying, hey, I want to activate the Turbulence from my hand, would show it to your opponent, not like the DIABELLSTAR that you can just summon onto the field. If a quick little thing here, it's not really about this deck here, but you can see it right here in the text. You can special summon this card from your hand by sending 1 card from your hand to the field to the graveyard. Here's just a point, which means there is no cost here. There's nothing to activate here. There's not an effect activation here. This is an inherent game summon, like Kashira Fenrir, like summoning from the extra deck. So when summoning from the extra deck, you are not like, I'm summoning from the extra deck. Here's Chainlink 1. I want to summon Relinquished Anima, because you just summon it. This is called inherent game summon, basically. I'm not quite sure if it's called that way, but inherent summon, something like this. And the Rescue Ace Turbulence is an effect summon. So your opponent could react to this when you make this Chainlink 1, summon your Rescue Ace Turbulence. During your main phase, you can set up to 4 Rescue Ace quick play spells or normal traps with different names directly from your deck. So this is the main play of the deck, and I think I don't have to explain to you why this is very powerful. You're basically summoning 1 card that sets you 4 cards, quick play spells, traps, and so on. And we will see in a moment we will also be able to activate them if we control a Rescue Ace Hydrant. Everything works together in this deck. If another card you control leaves the field by an opponent's card effect, this can come up, is quite specific because it has to be an opponent's card effect, cannot be by battle, except during the damage step you can target 1 card on the field, destroy it. So also quite nice, you can only use each effect of a Rescue Ace Turbulence once per turn. This will be quite important in the future when we get the the SP Little Knight, but that's not important right now. The first thing that is important to understand is this is the core play that you want to achieve when you are going first. This is also the core play that you basically want to go for at some point in breaking your opponent's board when going second, because this obviously gives you a lot of value. And the second thing that you have to understand goes together with the field spell here, which, let's read this so we can understand how this deck can basically win over time or win in the long run. This is the field spell Rescue HQ. You want to play it at 1. while your opponent controls a monster, all rescue as monsters, and only the rescue as monsters, only while your opponent controls a monster you control gain 500 attack and defense. This is quite nice, but the main thing is during your main phase, you can normal summon one rescue ace monster in addition to your normal summon or set. This is also quite nice. Sorry, this is the main thing that I wanted to talk about. Once per turn, you can target 4 of your rescue ace cards that are banished and or in your graveyard, so basically everywhere, and they don't need to be quick play spells or traps, can also be the rescue ace monsters. Shuffle them into the deck and then draw 1. So this is obviously great because remember, for the rescue ace turbulence to be summoned, he needs to banish cards and he will set 4 cards, which normally will always be your extinguish. We will talk about them in a moment. Your contain, then a copy of your alert, and your rescue. In the future, you will set the emergency, which is one of the cards that is still missing in this deck and is super strong, making or tying it all together here in this deck basically. So you will set them, then you will obviously use them on your opponent's turn to interrupt your opponent, or you might also use them on your turn to break your opponent's board. More to that in a moment. And then what you can do here, as we just read, you can use the field spell to just, in this case, these are exactly 4, so you might have set all 4 of these and then have used all 4 of these. Then you can just go the rescue ace HQ and shuffle them back into your deck, draw 1, and then obviously, because it's your turn again, you have just used your field spell, you can then activate this effect again to set 4 again, and you can basically do this like over and over again. The only thing that can happen obviously is this card being destroyed and going to the graveyard. We have a solution for this, or kind of a solution for this. The Barricade Borg blocker, which can add the field spell back to the hand from the graveyard, which is not really why we are playing this card. We'll come to this very strong card in a moment here when we are looking at the extra deck, but this is the first thing that you have to understand. This is what Rescue Ace wants to achieve, so you always have to think in terms of how can I get to my turbulence. Obviously, if you can just kill your opponent without getting to your turbulence, then you can just do that, but especially when going first, your main priority is getting to your turbulence. And one thing that you have to understand is that you don't have to summon the turbulence by banishing 2 rescue ace monsters, but in this deck here, it's also quite easy to just get the turbulence to the graveyard and then revive the turbulence, which is why a lot of cards are very interactive and work very well together with the rescue ace archetype, like the DIABELLSTAR or, for example, the Barricade Borg blocker, because now we have the Promethean Princess in game, right? Which is pretty easily made by just using 3 bodies, which is not hard to get to if you are starting out with an Ash or your Populous, for example. So it's not very hard to get into your Promethean Princess, and then obviously the Promethean Princess can summon a fire monster from your graveyard. So if you can get to your Princess and you can get your Turbulence in the grave, then that means that you can access your Turbulence by just resummoning it with the Princess. So sometimes it might look like if you have a hand where there's a Turbulence in hand and you don't have 2 other Rescue Ace cards, because remember you need 2 to be banished from the graveyard to get this guy on the field. So let's, for example, say you are starting with your, I don't know, your Rescue Ace Impulse and then the Turbulence in hand. Then obviously you can get your Impulse, you could normal summon the Impulse, get him to the grave somehow, and that's nice, but you then only have 1 Rescue Ace monster in the graveyard, which is not enough to get you to your Rescue Ace Turbulence. But if you can discard this thing, for example, for the cost of the DIABELLSTAR or with your Barricade Borg blocker, which is quite an insane combo, because just imagine you have the Rescue Ace Turbulence in your hand, and then you can make 2 monsters with different names. This is quite easy. So you use 2 monsters that you have on field, make the Barricade blocker, discard your Turbulence. You obviously will not really get anything from the second part of the effect, adding you the field spell, the continuous or field spell from a grave to your hand. You might have it in grave already, then it's way better obviously, but this is not why we are playing this. And then you have this Link 2 body on the field here that with an additional body that you might have, you could then climb up to into your Promethean Princess, and then you can just revive your Turbulence, going to your main play in setting 4 to the field. So this is all about the main play Rescue Ace Turbulence here, and we have cards that we can use to just get the Turbulence into the graveyard. Another thing that you could do, for example, is use the Snake Eyes Poplar, Turbulence from the graveyard in your spell and trap zone, and then could also use it for your original Symphosporites, getting it back to the graveyard, and then obviously getting to, for example, an Ash or a Hydrant, which is our level 1 fire monster in this deck. But I guess this is more about the Poplar and not about the Turbulence here. So we have seen Turbulence, we have seen the field spell, and now let's talk about another very important card here, the Rescue Ace Hydrant. This is our level 1 fire monster, which means this is the one that you can search with original Sinful Spoiled Snake Eye. This is also a card that can be revived with your Snake Eyes Flamberge Dragon. So let's read the card. It's a machine. Not all of them are machines, by the way. For example, the Rescue Ace Airlifter here, which will be the main combo starter in the future. We are only playing one. I will talk about this in a moment. Is a warrior, which comes up, but we will come to that when when we have the time, when we are there, basically. While you control a Rescue at a 0/0, which is not a problem, as we see in a moment. While you control a Rescue Ace monster, other than this one Hydrant, your opponent monster cannot target this card for attacks. Also, your opponent cannot target this card with card effects, which is quite nice because we will see in a moment the Rescue Ace Hydrant gives all of these cards here some neat little bonus effects. It can also work without him, but he basically gives them more power. This is one thing that is a bit unfortunate at the moment. In the future, you will be able to really like consistently get this thing back onto your field after you have set your 4 cards to make them even stronger. We will talk about this in a moment. But at the current moment, there will also be times, let's for example say you are starting with your Turbulence in the hand, can discard him with your Barricade blocker. We have talked about this. Promethean Princess, you summon your Turbulence and then you set 4. This is quite nice. Because, for example, the traps need a Rescue Ace monster to be activated, while these don't really, but all of them profit from having a Hydrant on the field. So if you then only have your Turbulence that you have resummoned with your Promethean Princess, then you will be able to activate the traps, but they won't get their bonus effects, which they are quite strong because you don't have access to your Hydrant. But in the future, you will, through your normal combo line with your Airlifter, be able to access your Hydrant then and have them on the field, or have him on the field quite consistently. And as you have already read here, he is protected as long as there's another Rescue Ace monster on the field from battle and card effects, which means the bonus effect that the Hydrant gives all these cards here can be quite easy protected if you have another Rescue Ace monster on the field, so your opponent cannot battle over this guy, which is why these stats don't really matter. You can only use each of the following effects of Rescue Ace Hydrant once per turn. You can activate a quick play spell or trap card that was set by the effect of your Rescue Ace card the turn it was set. So really, really impactful here. This is what I talked about when I was mentioning the fact that you could use Turbulence to break your opponent's board. So let's, for example, imagine your opponent builds the board and you go Turbulence and you set your 4 cards here and you have also a Hydrant on the field. What you can then do is, because remember, if you set a quick play spell, then you cannot activate it this turn. The Hydrant then, if it's on the field, allows you to basically activate one of your set cards immediately. So you could, for example, use your Extinguish, which is a card that destroys an opponent's monster, or your Contain, which is a card that negates an opponent's monster, which obviously helps you in breaking your opponent's board. So this is something to keep in mind. If you can get the set traps on the field and then also have your Hydrant there, then you can profit even more by being able to activate one of them the turn it was set. And then during your main phase, as if this was not enough, during your main phase you can add 1 Rescue Ace monster from your deck to your hand except the Hydrant. So this is your basic searching your monsters, which the most important thing is you will most obviously search your Turbulence. In the future you can also search your Airlifter, because Airlifter will get you access to the Emergency, the card that we are at the moment missing, and the Emergency could then get you access to your Turbulence. But for now you will most often use the Hydrant to just search your Turbulence, so you have it in hand, and then you can continue your plays, as we have already talked about, discarding the Turbulence or maybe summoning it, but we will talk about this in a moment when I show you some basic combos. We have the Snake Eye Ash and the Snake Eye Poplar. I will not read over the cards right now. If you don't know what the Snake Eye cards do, then please go over and check the Snake Eyes guide there. Also a very interesting deck, very, very strong. Might be the best at the moment. You could argue that could also be a Super Heavy Samurai, but remains to be seen here. We have the Ash, obviously, the main thing that you want to do with your Ash is search your Populous, which Populous gets you access to your original Sinful Spoiled Snake Eye, which then you can use to send your Populous in the Spell and Trap Zone away to access your Hydrant. This is a no-brainer here. Same thing with the DIABELLSTAR, obviously, and the Wanted getting you to your DIABELLSTAR, DIABELLSTAR getting you to your Sinful Spoils, and this one getting you to all of your level 1 monsters. So, as already said, if you don't know how this interacts here, please go over to my Snake Eye guide in the top right corner and maybe look at that video, or take a look at that video first. You will learn a lot, and then it will also be more clear what this engine wants to achieve here. I will talk about this from time to time when talking about the cards and the combos, but as I already said, I'm not like explaining everything here. The one thing that needs to be said here is that we are playing obviously Triple Ash. This is one of your best normal summons, and then we are playing one Popular and then also one Flame Birch Dragon. So we are playing not as much as in the pure Snake Eye variant, of course. The Flame Birch Dragon being really nice here as it gives us extra bodies that you can then, for example, use to climb up into your Princess, reviving a Turbulence, going into an Emblo Whale. There are a lot of things, or maybe an Appaloosa over your IP. There are a lot of things that you can do, obviously. We have Triple Maxi, Triple Ash Blossom, and this is where I wanted to talk about the problem that this deck at the current moment has. The list I'm running here is very trim. You could definitely argue about some picks here, but I think this is quite nice. The problem is that we are only able to run Triple Maxi, Triple Ash Blossom, and then we have Called By and Crossouts. This could obviously also be imperms here, so if you want to make this more consistent in terms of hand traps, you can change these out for imperms. You could, for example, change this out for an imperm, because I have realized that having the crossout here with only being able to cross out a Maxi and an Ash Blossom, because we don't run an imperm, we don't run Effect Radar, we don't run Nibiru, we don't run Roll and Lockbird, is not that great. So this could be changed up for an imperm. The Called By is quite nice, especially against other fire decks that are using the graveyard quite a lot. You can remove their Promethean Princess. You can, for example, if they activate Snake Eye Ash, they have to then send another card and the Snake Eye Ash to the graveyard to summon something from the deck, another Snake Eye monster that is. You can then use your Called By, just get it out of the graveyard, negate it. So the Called By is actually insane at the moment. I would not put this out at all, but the crossout could be put out here. Okay, we have the Maxi, the Ash, and that's what I'm talking about. We are currently missing a lot of consistency, as we are missing two of the most important cards in the deck. So this is why we have to basically run a bigger package, for example, Triple DIABELLSTAR, which is very important, because the DIABELLSTAR, getting to the DIABELLSTAR will get you to your Turbulence. I will show you this in a moment. So this is why we are playing the Triple DIABELLSTAR, for example, but we are also playing the Triple DIABELLSTAR because, as I already talked about, this one can, for example, if you have a Turbulence in hand, just discard the Turbulence, because remember, if you do not know the card, you can special summon this card from your hand by sending one card from your hand or field to the graveyard. You have to do this to summon her, so you could send a Turbulence, but what you can also do is you could also use your DIABELLSTAR, which you have 3 of, to send a Rescue Ace card from your hand to the graveyard, because remember, you need 2 in your grave to summon the Turbulence. So let's, for example, say you have 2 Rescue Ace impulses in your hand, right? And then you have, let's say, a Turbulence. What you could then obviously do is, I've talked about this before, you can normal summon Rescue Ace impulse, and it's not that hard to get him to the grave via a Link summon, right? But the thing is, or the question is, how do you get your second impulse to the grave? Because you have already used up your normal summon, and that's quite bad. What you can then do is you use your DIABELLSTAR, discarding the second impulse, and then you have DIABELLSTAR on your field and your impulse, and then because you already have 2 bodies on the field, you could then continue to make a Link summon or whatever, and then the other impulse is also in the graveyard, and at this point you will have 2 impulses in the graveyard, enabling you to go into your Rescue Ace Turbulence. So always keep this in mind when having the DIABELLSTAR in hand and Rescue Ace cards, that you can discard your Rescue Ace cards so they are in the grave, so you can use them for your Turbulence. Because the thing is that the Hydrant alone, unfortunately, at this moment will not get us into Turbulence. It will in the future over the Airlifter, but unfortunately now it can't, because we are missing cards. So if, for example, you use your Hydrant and search your Turbulence, then that's quite nice, and you can get rid of the Hydrant quite easily by using your Linguribu or your Anima. But then you only have the Hydrant in the grave, which does not allow you to summon your Rescue Ace Turbulence. You would then need another Rescue Ace card, and this card would be needed to get to the graveyard. Which obviously you might be able to if you have, for example, the Alert or the Rescue, but more to that when we come to the cards. So we have Rescue as Impulse 3 times. This is also Warrior like the Airlifter, 1/5/1/5, 3 stars. During your main phase, you can choose the effect or the one effect monster your opponent controls with the highest attack, your choice of type, and neither player can activate that monster's effect on the field this turn. This was quite funny because you could use this. At the moment, it's not that important, but it will be in the future once again. You can use this to normal summon this guy and target your opponent's Expolier Noir, thereby negating the Expolier Noir. So this is a nice little effect that you should keep in mind, though the thing is that you will most likely not normal summon this guy, but discard him for his second effect. But keep in mind, this is a very strong effect that you can use to negate an opponent's monster. When, for example, breaking your opponent's board. When your opponent activates a monster effect on the field, quick effect. So at any time, at your turn, at his turn, or her turn, during each phase, obviously, You can tribute this card from your hand or face up field, so you could normal summon this guy and then tribute him, but you can also do it from the hand, which is quite nice because remember we want to get the Rescue Ace cards in the graveyard to firstly recycle them with the field spell, but also to get our Turbulence live. You can tribute this card from your hand or face up field, special summon one machine, Rescue Ace monster from your deck. Keep in mind here you can only summon a machine from your deck, not one of the warriors, so it can't summon itself, can't summon the Rescue Ace Airlifter, but it can summon, for example, the Fire Attacker, the Fire Engine, the Hydrant, or also the Turbulence. So let's imagine a scenario in which you are going second and your opponent, I don't know, activates, you have an impulse in hand, right? And your opponent activates any monster effect. Then you could just activate your impulse, sending the impulse to the graveyard, and then summon either your Turbulence, your Hydrant, your Fire Attacker, or your Fire Engine. We were talking about these in a moment, so then it will be more clear which makes sense when. But the cool thing is that you then have a Rescue Ace card in the graveyard for your next turn to get a Turbulence online. But what you could also do, this really depends on what your opponent plays. You have to understand the deck of your opponent because otherwise you can run into problems. But what you could, in theory, do, you could just go Rescue Ace Impulse and summon a Turbulence onto the field. Obviously, you cannot activate the Turbulence in your opponent's turn, but if the Turbulence doesn't get destroyed, then you could just, if your opponent passes over to you, activate the Turbulence and then set 4, and it was basically for free. So this is theoretically access to your Turbulence, if you want to call it that, right? Also, if, for example, your opponent activates anything, so let's say you are going second, right, and the opponent has a board and you start your plays with, I don't know, you normal summon a Snake Eye Ash, you have an impulse in the hand, and then he negates the Ash with his Baron de Fleur on the field, right? Then you could chain the impulse, discard the impulse, summon a Turbulence, and boom, there's your Turbulence, and boom, there's your set 4, and bam, you are into the game basically. Also keep in mind that, for example, if your opponent, let's say you play against any combo deck that summons a Baron de Fleur, right? So what could happen there is that you at the start of his combos you are using your impulse, you discard him, you summon the Rescue Ace Turbulence, but then at some point he summons a Baron de Fleur, and obviously he has the destruction effect of the Baron de Fleur, and let's imagine he's not Manadium, which sometimes needs the effect for the own monsters, but he uses the effect to destroy your Turbulence. Makes sense, right? Because why would he leave the Turbulence up? Then it's still quite nice because the Turbulence is in the graveyard then, and as we have just talked about, having the Turbulence in the graveyard is in most cases better than having the Turbulence in the deck, because it's way easier to access him in the graveyard than it is to access him in the deck and then summon him through his specific summoning condition, banishing 2. So this is quite nice with the impulse here. You could also say, okay, I want a Hydrant on the field, but I think the Hydrant makes in most cases less sense than it does the Turbulence, because Turbulence is really what you want to achieve here. Though keep in mind, if for example you have these 4 cards set on the field and your opponent somehow kills, let's say you have these 4 set cards and a Turbulence, right? So now you are able to activate your traps because you control a Rescue Ace monster. We will talk about them in a moment. But let's say your opponent kills your Turbulence, then you have a problem because you then cannot activate your traps anymore. But if, for example, you use your impulse, then you could obviously summon another Rescue Ace Turbulence. But in this case, it would make way more sense to summon a Hydrant from the deck, because remember, the Hydrant gives all these cards bonus effects. So impulse is a very, very flexible, very good card here that at the moment we will play at 3 because we are missing the Airlifter. Because we're not missing the Airlifter, but we are missing the Airlifter support cards. In the future you might cut this to 1, or maybe even there were even this not playing this thing at all, though I think it's quite a nice card, very, very flexible, very strong. And then we are playing one of these cards here. These are also flexible cards, but way less important. If you wanted to, you could cut them, but I would not really recommend. If I would cut something, then maybe the Fire Attacker. I think the Engine is a bit better, but both of them could be cut for hand traps. You could try this. Let's read the Fire Attacker first. Oh, we have skipped the Airlifter, but we will come to the Airlifter in a moment. Let's first talk about these, because these are also machines that you can summon with your impulse here. Fire Attacker, 2/2, so they have a lot of attack points, which is quite nice, and defense in general. Machine, if a Rescue Ace monster is normal summoned or special summoned to your field, except Rescue Ace Fire Attacker, you can special summon this card from your hand. This thing can basically do the same. If a Rescue Ace monster is normal or special summoned to your field, except this one here, you can special summon this card from your hand, which this is very nice, because think about the situation in which you start with, for example, your Hydrant or your Impulse, you normal summon your Hydrant or or your impulse, you would rather likely want to summon your hydrant to search your turbulence, of course. But let's say you have one of these in the hand and then one of these here, then you can go Rescue Ace Hydrant, normal summon the hydrant. You can special summon them because the Rescue Ace monster was summoned. You can then search the turbulence, and remember, you now have two bodies on the field which are both Rescue Ace monsters, and if you then just link them away, for example, for a Sunlight Wolf, then you have two Rescue Ace monsters in the grave, and then you can play your Rescue Ace Turbulence by banishing them and playing him under the Sunlight Wolf, and then you would even be able to add, maybe you have used an Ash, back to hand through the Sunlight Wolf, but that's a bit too much right now, a bit too far. But you can special summon this card from your hand when a Rescue Ace monster is normal or specialed. Same thing with the Rescue Ace Fire Engine here, so keep that in mind. And then if a card is added to your opponent's hand except by drawing it, so not drawing through the draw phase, basically if, for example, he uses his Snake Eye Ash to add a Snake Eye Poplar, then this would trigger here. You can, except during the damage step, you can draw two cards, then discard one, which drawing two and then giving one back is really nice. For example, Vanadium has also this card here, but it draws twos and then puts one back to the deck. But once again, this is quite nice here because we can draw two and then discard one, which obviously means once again we can discard one of our Rescue Ace cards, so we have more Rescue Ace in the graveyard for the Turbulence. What is quite nice about this card is that you can basically, if you are getting this to the field via your impulse, you can basically make sure that it really resolves. Because let's, for example, say your opponent plays a Snake Eye Ash. Activate Snake Eye Ash, and this card says, if you don't know it, this card is normal or special summon, you can add one level 1 fire monster from your deck to your hand. So this fulfills the condition for the Rescue Ace Fire Attacker. But what do? You have an impulse in hand, so where's the Fire Attacker, right? So what you can do then is you chain your Fire Attacker from the hand to your Ash, to the opponent's Ash. This one gets discarded to the graveyard, then you choose your Fire Attacker to be summoned, and because this was chain link 2, this is the first thing to happen. So you will summon your Fire Attacker on the field, and then your opponent will add the card through the Snake Eye Ash, which means your Fire Attacker will then trigger, and you can then draw two cards and discard one. You might be able to discard a Rescue Ace monster to the graveyard for follow-up, for the Turbulence basically, and you might be able to draw into hand traps, which you could definitely argue if you play the Fire Attacker, it would make sense to maybe play more hand traps, so put something like the Cross out. You can also choose to put some consistency pieces like Ashes or DIABELLSTARs out. It's definitely, you have to weigh what's important for you. Do you want more hand traps to stop your opponent, or maybe board breakers like Talents, which is quite nice at the moment, or do you want more consistency? This is something you have to decide for yourself. You could also just go for more cards in here, putting more hand traps in here, but if you, for example, play a 50-card Rescue Ace deck with 10 more hand traps, let's say we are doing this, then it's basically the same as playing a 40 list, but putting consistency out for hand traps, because you have put in hand traps, but you have lost consistency, so it's basically the same. But you could also do this if you wanted to. I'm not a big fan of going over 40, it's just me, but yeah. And then we have the Rescue Ace Fire Engine, which you can also summon with your impulse. And the Fire Engine, we have read this, has the same special summon effect or normal summon effect. Special summon effect when a Rescue monster is normal or special summoned. And then it has another effect like the Fire Attacker. If a monster is special summoned to your opponent's fields, except during the damage step, you can special summon one level 4 or lower Rescue Ace monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. So this time around, we can also summon a Warrior, but we cannot summon the Turbulence because it's level 9, sorry, and we can also not summon the Fire Attacker because it's level 6. So this one basically draws you 2 and then discards 1, and this one can summon another one. So that's something that's really cool about this deck, especially if you play the impulse. So let's say your opponent starts the game and you have an impulse, and your opponent activates an effect, you play your impulse summoning the Fire Engine. Then of course at some point he will most likely summon another monster, so you can then summon another Fire, if I want to say Fire King, another Rescue Ace monster from your deck, which most likely will be your Airlifter. We will talk about it in a moment. You can also search something, which most likely will be your Airlifter, and then it's your opponent's turn, but with one card in your hand you have basically established 2 bodies on the field that obviously you can use next turn to make some link plays here. You can see we have a big link package in here which you can use to make some link plays here. but you could also use to get them into the graveyard to have access to your turbulence, obviously. So these are quite nice, can be summoned by the impulse here. And now let's talk about the airlifter, the last remaining monster that we are using. It's a level 4 1717, quite nice. Remember, with the field spell, it gets, when your opponent controls a monster, 500 push, which makes these boys quite strong here. If this card is normal or special summoned, you can add 1 Rescue Ace spell from your deck to your hand. So at the moment you can either add the rescue or the alert, which is a bit unfortunate because you want to add your emergency. This is the best card, the best spell that you can add here. Will come in the future though. When your opponent activates second effect, a monster effect on the field, quick effect, you can tribute this card from your hand or face up field, a special summon 1 rescue S monster from your hand except this one, and then you can only use each. So this second effect here is definitely one of the most useless ones, I would say. If this could summon from the deck, that would be a bit different, but once again keep this effect in mind, because for example, if you control, or if you have a turbulence in hand and then an airlifter on the field or in your hand, so in the scenario we just talked about where you use your impulse to get into your fire engine and then your opponent summons another monster and fire engine summons the airlifter searches you something, then maybe you already have a turbulence in hand, and then on your turn you could activate this quick effect here if your opponent activates a monster effect, and then just maybe summon the turbulence from hand. So keep this effect in mind. This is not a bad effect, though this is worse than, for example, Impulse's effect to be able to be discarded from the hand to summon basically any Rescue Ace monster besides himself and the airlifter from the deck. So as you can see, we are always talking about ways to access our turbulence, because turbulence is just the main play of this deck. Turbulence is the way in which you generate advantage and basically wrestle down your opponent. These are all the Rescue Ace cards here. Then we are playing Triple DIABELLSTAR. I've talked about this. It's really nice being able to discard Rescue Ace monsters, maybe also the Turbulence, resummon him with the Promethean Princess from the grave. But obviously also this sets you your original Sinful Spoiled Snake Eye, which gives you access to your Snake Eye engine here with the Big Daddy Snake Eye, or also your Hydrant. So this starts it all, I would say, the DIABELLSTAR, the Black Witch. And having the DIABELLSTAR is also a way, if you are not interrupted, to get into your Turbulence and set 4. So obviously we want to play her at 3, right? Though you don't have to remember this, but I think it's optimal in my opinion. Then we have the Snake Eyes from Birch Dragon. This is obviously only in here. It's not so important. A second effect can obviously also come up where you, for example, put your own IP Masquerina from the grave in the spell and trap zone and then summon her out on your opponent's turn. But we are using him more for the first effect, in which he can summon 2 level 1 monsters from the graveyard. Just bodies that we can use to link summon, a link climb. Same with the Snake Eyes deck, so if you know that deck, you know what's up here. We have 1 for 1, which is just a nice one. Send 1 monster from your hand to the graveyard, special summon 1 level 1 monster from your deck, gives you access to your Ash, gives you access to your Hydrant, or if you want the Poplar, you can also go for him. This is a card that you could cut. This is a nice consistency tool, but if you want to make some space here, this also, the second original Sinful Spoil, is also cuttable if you want to go for more hand traps. So in theory, you could go this out, the 1 for 1 out, this out for triple impermanences. Infinite impermanences, which is, I think, what I would put in here over Droll and Lockbirds, question mark, maybe Droll and Lockbirds, some either triple Droll Lockbirds or triple imperms is what is missing here, and then you have 9 hand traps, which then is quite alright, I would say. But as I already said, you have to decide whether you want consistency or you want hand traps. Then let's talk about the spells and traps. We have Rescue Quick Play spell. This card is always treated as a Rescue Ace card, as I already talked about, so can be used for the Turbulence and can also be used for the field spell to shuffle them back. We have skipped the field spell, but we have talked about them, the field spell, so this should be clear. Rescue is quite nice, but will be even nicer in the future. Target 1 Rescue Ace monster in your graveyard, or if you control Rescue Ace Hydrant, you can target 1 monster in your opponent's graveyard instead, special summon it to your field. So the Hydrant gives this the bonus effect of also being able to choose your opponent's graveyard, which is very, very strong. The reason why this will be better in the future is the fact that in the future we will be more consistently be able to have a Hydrant on the field because of the airlifter support that we will get, basically. At the moment, there will be times, as I already talked about, you starting with your Turbulence, only your Turbulence from the Rescue Ace cards in your hand, being able to discard him and then set 4, but then you only have Turbulence Turbulence, which means you cannot use the second part of this effect, stealing something from your opponent's graveyard, which obviously in a meta where there are a lot of graveyard decks running around, so all the fire decks are kind of graveyard decks, you could say, because they have the Snake Eye stuff in the grave, they have the Promethean Princess in the grave, and Fire King, which is something we will get in the future, and it's also a fire deck, also has another card that's very impactful in the graveyard. Also in the mirror match, for example, if you could steal your opponent's, I don't know, Snake Eye Ash and thereby starting your plays. This is very, very strong, and this can be used in the future when we have more consistent access to our Hydrant as an interruption tool. It's basically, it's like a Caught by the Grave somehow. Obviously, it's not the same as a Caught by the Grave because it doesn't negate, but in this current meta, it actually does negate something like a Promethean Princess if you just summon her out, even when she's activated, for example. You could just summon her out and then she will still destroy the cards. So if you want to interrupt, for example, the Promethean Princess with this, then just pick her out of the graveyard before she activates, right? This is Rescue. We have also Alert, which at the moment is definitely the weakest one, will also become better once we get the remaining support cards, because then you will be able to search the how is it called, the other monster that we will get, the Rescue Ace Preventer, which is an insane card. This card also always treated Rescue Ace Quick Play spell, add one Rescue Ace monster from your graveyard to your hand, or if you control Rescue Ace Hydrant, you can add one Rescue Ace monster from your deck to your hand instead. Quite nice. You can access your Rescue Ace Turbulence, for example. So one thing that you could do is you could just go Rescue Ace Hydrant, and then so let's say your Rescue Ace Hydrant was summoned by the original Sinful Spoils, yeah, so it's special summon, you still have a normal summon. You could then go Rescue Ace Hydrant, search your Airlifter, you could summon the Airlifter searches you your Alert, and because you control the Hydrant, you can then use the Alert here to get the Turbulence. And then remember, you have the Airlifter and the Hydrant on the field. Just have to get them into the grave via a Link summon. In this case, it's most likely always the Sunlight Wolf, because you will get a card back when you summon the Turbulence into the zone, and then you have a Turbulence on the field, right? So this can be quite nice, depending on your hand. And we will look at some test hands when talking about the combo part, basically, of this video. We have the Wanted, nothing to say here. We search our DIABELLSTAR, which gets us to our Turbulence, so we want triple Wanted here. We are also able to abuse the other effects of Wanted, in which we can, for example, banish this one, put one of our Snake Eye cards back into the deck, and then add a level 1 to our hand. Could be the Hydrant, for example. And then we can also just put this back to the deck on the bottom of the deck with the Wanted in our graveyard, and then draw a card. So this engine is just bonkers, generates a lot of advantage. We have Contain. This card also always treated Rescue Ace if you control a Rescue Ace monster. So the traps you always need, I talked about this already, you need to control a Rescue Ace monster to activate them. If you control a Rescue Ace monster, target one effect monster your opponent controls. This turn, that effect monster cannot attack. Also, its effects are negated. And the crazy thing is, this is not only a negation, this is also it cannot attack. And this it cannot attack thing, this can be very impactful, because let's, for example, imagine you have an Appaloosa on the field and you negate something, and let's say she has 1/6 attack then, and your opponent has anything, let's say an Airlifter with 1/7 attack, and he's like, okay, I will go battle phase and I will just battle over your Appaloosa, so she's no longer there and can no longer negate me. Then you could just go Contain, and the Rescue Ace Airlifter would then not be able to attack your Appaloosa. And the cool thing is that obviously you can also do this in the battle phase, so your opponent is like, I want to go battle phase, and you're like, okay, go battle phase then. You just activate your Contain, he cannot attack, and he has to go main phase 2. Obviously, your opponent will probably know that you have the Contain set because you activated your Turbulence, and you have to show the cards you set to your opponent, but you will shuffle them then, so he does not know where the specific card is. And then also the Contain gets the bonus effect. If you control Rescue Ace Hydrant, at resolution of this effect, that monster also cannot be used as material for a Fusion, Synchro, XYZ, or a Link summon this turn. And this is quite interestingly worded. So if you control Rescue Ace Hydrant at resolution of this effect, that means that, for example, if you activate this to contain the opponent's Rescue Ace Airlifter and your opponent has an IP Masquerena on the board, he could then go IP Masquerena and use this for a Link summon, because this restriction restriction here only applies at resolution, and the card will resolute on chain link 1, but the IP Masquerena will happen before that. So this is a nice little trick here that you could use to play around contained second effect, which this is nice, right? Because especially in a meta where there are a lot of link plays, you could for example just imagine this scenario: your opponent plays like Scareclaw and he goes like Reichardt, and Reichardt wants to search a spell card. You go, okay, no, I negate this, then he doesn't get the search. But what you then want to do as a Scareclaw player, obviously you want to use your Reichardt, link 1 into your Lightheart, which then searches through the field spell. But if, for example, you have contained the Reichardt, then it can't even go into the link 1 because you cannot link summon with him. So don't underestimate how strong this is. This is not only a monster negate, this is way more, being or basically enabling or disabling your opponent from attacking with the monster, and also not enabling them to use them for any extra deck summons. This is something to keep in mind. Sometimes you need to contain something not because you want to negate the effect, but you want your opponent, or you want to stop your opponent from using them for an extra deck summon. So maybe your opponent has only this one tuner on the field that he needs for a synchro summon. Then you could just contain the tuner, and yeah, that's basically it. If you control a hydrant, that is. And then we have Extinguish, always treated as Rescue Ace card. If you control a Rescue Ace monster, target one effect monster your opponent controls, destroy it. Then if you currently control the hydrant, your opponent cannot activate the effects of that destroyed monster or of monsters with its same origin and name this turn. Which this is super nice, because some cards obviously have effects in the graveyard, right? So you destroy them. For example, you can destroy the Snake Eyes from Birch Dragon, and normally in the graveyard it would then trigger to summon 2 level 1 bodies, but because Extinguish was used with the hydrant, you then can't. So these traps here are way more than they seem to be, way stronger than on the surface it looks like, with just a negate and a destruction basically. Then we have our extra deck, we have Baron de Fleur, we have the Linkuriboh, which you can use to, you know the play by now I guess, but you can just go Populous, go into Linkuriboh, and then Populous can be set into your spell and trap zone. And then you can use the Populous for free basically as cost for your original Symphospore Snaker, which says send one other send one other face-up card you control to the graveyard. And you could also use this for your Hydrant if you want to get your Hydrant into the graveyard to maybe summon your Turbulence. You can also just use your Linkuriboh. Keep in mind though that you can also tribute the Linkuriboh once it, not the Linkuriboh, but when this thing is engraved, you can also tribute 1 level 1 monster, quick effect, and special summon this card. So for example, you are playing your Hydrant and you have a Linkuriboh engraved, then you activate your Hydrant to search something, your opponent is like Infinite Impermanence or Effect Veiler, and you are like, aha, quick effect. You tribute the Hydrant and summon the Linkuriboh, and thereby your Hydrant has just dodged the effect of the Impermanence or the Effect Veiler or anything else it targets basically, and then you can just go and search. So this is a very strong card, and this is not you can't not play this card. It's a must in this deck. The Anima is not a must, but it can come up. You have a lot of level 1 monsters here, and your extra deck definitely has enough space to play this card. In the pure Snagger version, you definitely have less space to do stuff like this. So just go for your Anima here if you want to. Quite nice, because a lot of people play into that. You have Nightmare Phoenix that you can also, if you have 2 Rescue Ace bodies that you want to get into the graveyard, you could just make a Nightmare Phoenix and then also get a bonus effect where you can destroy an opponent's spell and trap card and then summon your Turbulence. You have the Sunlight Wolf here, which can get you cards back once you summon in his zone. So a very basic play that you could do is using your Flamberge Dragon and another body, let's say an Impulse here, to go into your Sunlight Wolf. Then your Flamberge will trigger and summon 2 level 1 bodies that you can summon under the Sunlight Wolf, and then you can add something back, for example the Flamberge Dragon, or you might want to add your Impulse back so you can activate him. Depends on the situation, of course. You have Hita. I don't think I need to explain this. We are in the fire meta, so Hita basically always has a target. Hita is a bit like Promethean Princess, as you can use the princess to link climb 1 level higher, because the princess summons you something onto the field, so you get a body for free that you can then go into an Ember Whale in if you want to. And it's basically the same with the Hita. If your opponent ashes you, everyone plays Ash, so you just go with 2 bodies into the Hita. Hita resummons the Ash, and then you have a free body on your field. We have the IP Masquerena. I don't think I need to explain. There is this play with the Snake Eyes from Birch. If you just go, if for example you play your Ash and you add your Populous, and then your opponent roll and Lockbirds you, then you can basically get to your Flamberge Dragon, and you will have one of the cards on the field, and then you can go into an IP Masquerina, and then you can resummon your Flamberge Dragon with your Princess, and then just set the IP Masquerina and the spell and trap. But this is more of a Snake Eye combo, so if you want to understand the Snake Eye combos, then go and check my Snake Eye guide out. But you can also do this in this deck here. We have talked about the Barricade blocker and why this is important. It's important to discard your Turbulence, for example, or Rescue Ace card that needs to be discarded for your Turbulence. But keep in mind, this also can get you a field spell from the graveyard if your opponent destroys it, because it's a prime target, back to the hand, which is just amazing. We have the Dark, which is also super strong, not as strong as Hita here, but what you can do is, you obviously don't have a level 1 dark monster, but you can turn all of your level 1 monsters into a Link Kuribo, which is a dark monster, and then you can use him, or also a DIABELLSTAR, which is also dark, to go into a dark. You could then steal your opponent's DIABELLSTAR. So let's, for example, say you have a Hydrant and another card, the Impulse. I like to use the Impulse as an example. You just make a Link Kuribo and then go into a dark, stealing your opponents in the graveyard Black Witch. Everyone's playing that at the moment, and then you can obviously use the Black Witch effect to search your own Sinful Spoils, and from there on start your combo. So it's really nice. Dark is amazing. Spread Elf can come up at some times. You can make Spread Elf IP Masquerina plays if that somehow works out. Not that important here, don't really need it. You could also put in a second Promethean Princess, as this card is just super insane. You know the card by now, I guess. If not, go check out this Snake Eye deck to understand it a bit better. We will see it in a moment also. We have the Embloware as the normal card that you will go into with your Promethean Princess, because she fire locks you on the field, so you need a fire to climb up into. We have Appaloosa. I have pulled the alternative art. I'm very happy here. And then Access Code to finish, and then also an Underworld Goddess to maybe out something that's not easily outable. But there's definitely space in this deck. You can put out the Baron de Fleur, you can put out this, you can put out this here, you can put out... Could also put out this, you could put out the Sun Knight Wolf, but all in all, I think it's quite nice. A second Promethean Princess might be the thing that I'm most likely to put in here. This is very flexible here, so there are also different options that you could choose to put in here. And we can quickly take a look at any remaining Rescue Ace cards, because there's one that you could also play if you wanted to, but normally no one does. Actually, there is one more here. We can also take a look at them, because it's a Rescue Ace guide after all. This is Reinforce a normal trap. Target one Rescue Ace monster you control. For the rest of this turn, that monster you control gains 1/5 attack defense, is unaffected by your opponent's monster's effects, and the next time it would be destroyed by battle, it is not destroyed. And then the second one is quite nice. You can banish this card from your graveyard, then target one Rescue Ace spell in your graveyard, set that card. This part of the effect is way better than the first one in my opinion. So this is a nice protection effect, but it's not really that important, and you always want to set these cards over this card. That's why you don't really want this. And then you have the Rescue Ace Monitor, level 4, 1818 warrior. If this card is normal special, you can add one Rescue Ace trap from your deck to your hand. This is basically like an airlifter, but this adds a trap, which is way worse than adding like a spell, because the spell you can use at this turn, the trap you can't. And quick effect, you can tribute this card from your hand or face a field, then target one Rescue Ace monster in your graveyard, special summon it. So this special summons from the graveyard, the Rescue Ace airlifter from the hand. So this is just a way worse Rescue Ace airlifter. This is why we are not playing it. We are also not playing the airlifter, or we are playing one airlifter because the card is quite nice, because the airlifter is the one card that can search your field spell, which is something that you definitely want to do once you have basically, let's say you went first, set up all the stuff here, interrupted your opponent, then the play goes back to you. Then you want to have access to your airlifter if you can, so you can get the field spell, so you can then reset all the spells and trap. We have talked about this. Sorry guys. So this is why we are playing the airlifter, but you will go triple airlifter once the remaining support cards are here. But for now, the Impulse is way better, giving you direct access to your Turbulence or other important cards. Okay, we have talked about every card in here. Now let's go and hop over to the combo part of the video, where I basically show you the basic lines that you can use to go into your main play, the Rescue Ace Turbulence. And then we might also look at some random hands and try to play them out as best as we can. Alright guys, for the first time I will show you the basic DIABELLSTAR line, which is our one card combo actually into the Turbulence. So we are going to grab our DIABELLSTAR, the Black Witch. Does not matter at this point what we discard. Just imagine we only had the Black Witch in hand here. We go summon the Black Witch. There she goes. And then we can activate the Black Witch, set the original Sinful Spoils, which then we can activate obviously to get a level 1 monster to the field here. And now you're going to get your hydrant to the field, which now you can activate your hydrant to search. We still have the normal summon, keep that in mind. So we are grabbing the Rescue Ace Airlifter in this case, so this is why we did one copy of the guy. Then you activate the Airlifter, you activate Airlifter's effect, you can and then search the alert, which adds Rescue Ace card, Rescue Ace Monster to your hand. A Rescue Ace Monster, and then we can add our Turbulence. This is a play I talked about, and now we have the setup that we basically need. Now you only need to get them into the grave, which the most it depends, right? So if your opponent maybe has an Ash, use the Heater. If your opponent has a face stone that you want to pop, then use your Phoenix. If you want to end up on your Masquerina afterwards, which can also be a nice play, you could also do that, but you could also decide to go Sunlight Wolf if you want to add one of your fires back to the hand. This would not work, by the way, if you only had this grave here. So let's say we have used the Ash, then the Sunlight Wolf is definitely the best one. But let's say we are going for the Epic Masquerina here, because if you use the Sunlight Wolf now, remember that we now need to banish the 2 Rescue Ace cards here for the Turbulence, and then the Sunlight Wolf would not be able to add something here. So you would need an Ash Blossom or something else in the grave for this to work. But let's just use the IP Masquerina. This obviously works. Oh, that's not true actually. I just realized we also have the alert that you can banish. So you could also have used the Sunlight Wolf here. But obviously the Masquerina is a bit more interruption on your opponent's turn. So we can just banish whatever. It does not really matter here. What I just realized you could also put in here, because this would work with this combo quite well. You could also put in a Nightmare Unicorn in here, because now we can activate the Turbulence. We are setting everything here. This is a bit, yeah, a bit badly made in my opinion, because you have to click this all the time over again. You could also just give me a bar in which I select which of these I want to set here. We are setting this. We can't set the alert because we already have used the alert. Obviously, normally you would be able to set the alert, but in this case you can't. And this is what I talked about. The rescue is not that impactful right now because we are not having a hydrant on the field, and we can't get the hydrant on the field. Maybe you can. So we could, for example, go into the princess and then resummon the hydrant. Then we would have the hydrant live. But then you would also want to keep the hydrant on the field, and then you have the Promethean Princess on the field, which you want to have in the grave. So it's basically, I guess you have to decide what you want. Do you want to keep your IP Masquerina Turbulence play, which could get into an Nightmare Unicorn? Remember to put that in. That could be quite nice over, for example, the Baron here. You could go into your Nightmare Unicorn play from here or something else. If you have another body, you could just also make an Appaloosa. Keep in mind, though, that you want to wait with your Unicorn play until you have at least used your Contain and Extinguish interruptions, because otherwise you don't have a Rescue Ace card on the field and then you can't activate them. But this can be your last interruption, or as I already said, you could in this case also decide to just go Princess, get these to the grave here, and then revive the Turbulence, which another disadvantage of this would obviously be the fact, I mean, we have made a 1-card combo, right? So you might also have more cards, but the disadvantage here is that you are not protected, so your opponent could battle over the Hydrant, which if he goes to the battle phase, what you could then obviously do is you could activate the rescue to get back the Turbulence onto the field, and then he can't attack. But we have summoned the Hydrant because we want to use the additional effects of these cards. We optimally want to use this as a grave hit interruption for our opponent, and if we need to summon our own Turbulence to protect the Hydrant, we can't. And this also has the disadvantage of having the Princess on the field, which you want to have in grave, so you can pop something with her. So it's definitely you have to think about the way you want to do it. But this is basically your 1-card combo, either starting off with a Wanted that gets you your DIABELLSTAR, or starting out with your DIABELLSTAR, or you could also start out with only the original Sympho Spoils, but this can only work if you do not have to use your normal summon to get a body on the field that you can send away with original Sympho Spoils. So you need to have your normal summon left, because otherwise you cannot normal summon your Rescue Ace Airlifter, and that is then a big problem. There's also a merit here to not banish the Rescue Ace Airlifter, but the Rescue Ace this Hydrant. This is something that you have to think about. Do you want to make this Hydrant play that I just showed you here? In the case that you want to make this Hydrant play, then go ahead and banish the Rescue Ace Airlifter. But if you want to, for example, have a more easier access to your field spell for the next turn to reset all your spells and traps, then you should not banish your Airlifter, because you can revive the Airlifter with this one from the grave or revive him with a princess, but you can't get him out of here if the field spell is not there, and he's the guy that searches the field spell basically. So a lot of things to keep in mind here, but this is just the basic combo that gets you to your basic play, the Rescue Ace Turbulence, which is what we want to do here. Now let's look at some other lines and test hands and see what we can do there. Probably the most optimal play that you can do that I want to show before we go for some random test hands is to start with 1-for-1. So you could go 1-for-1 discarding, let's say, this one, because this is normally something that we need to add here, but let's imagine we didn't have it in hand already. Then what you can do here is you can go Snake Eye Ash. The important thing with the 1-for-1, also with the DIABELLSTAR and the Sympho spoils, is the fact you always have to ask yourself the question, do I still have my normal summon? Because that matters a lot, because if you do have your normal summon, that means you can normal summon your Airlifter. We are specially summon the Pop here, that gives us the Sympho spoils to the hand. Now we can go basic line here and make a free body. Go with this into this here, then Kuribo, then we will get this back. We are at 3 summons right now. Set this here so we can send it away for free basically. We will probably play into the Nip, but it is what it is. Now we are summoning this guy here, and what you would normally search now, I couldn't really set the hand up, but you would now search your Rescue Ace Airlifter with your Hydrant. So let's imagine now that we would have done this and we have the Airlifter on the hand. We can now normal summon the guy. This is summon number 5. So at this moment we could be nipped here, obviously a problem, but actually not really, because we have alert that we now can add. We are at 5 summons now. He nips us here. We have 2 Rescue Ace monsters in the graveyard. I can now activate alert and then just add the Turbulence. And if we if you have nipped us here, then I could still go Turbulence because these are in the grave right now. But another cool thing that we can do at this point is we can make an Appaloosa before we go and make our Turbulence. There are different lines that you could use here depending on what you want to do actually. The first thing that we can do is to send away the Ash together with, let's say, the Lingoribo for the Flamberge Dragon. Then you could at this point here use Flamberge Dragon, set something in the spell trap for next turn follow-up. You could also keep the effect. You could also set something from your opponent there. The next thing we are going to do is we are making a Sunlight Wolf with these 2 here. This could also be a Nightmare Phoenix if you want to destroy something from your opponent's field, but at the moment we are on turn 1, so it doesn't really count. You want to resummon the Hydrant, and then the other one is not that important. Get the Hydrant to the field, get this one to the field. Now we can re-add the Snake Eyes Flamberge Dragon, for example. You could also add the Poplar if you wanted to. Maybe you have an Ash here, which is even nicer. Now what we can do now is we can make an Apo. You don't, make an Apo with these ones here. Obviously the Hydrant is the most important one because the Hydrant gives us the bonus effects. Now we have an Apo with 2-4, and now we can do our Turbulence, and we are safe from more things, especially Effect Veiler. The only thing that could really be a problem at this point is an Impermanence, which we can obviously not negate with our Appaloosa, Bow of the Goddess. So now we can set 4, and we do not even only have the set 4 from the Turbulence, but we also have a Rescue Ace Hydrant on the field and a 3 material Appaloosa and whatever else you had in the hand. Obviously, once again, we have used the alert to get here, so we can't set the alert. We also had the HQ in hand, but it doesn't really matter. So this is definitely something that's very, very strong. If you have enough buddies, maybe from your Snake Eye plays, or maybe your opponent gives the board over to you, and you still have buddies, or can get buddies with Snake Eye stuff or whatever, and you can make an Appaloosa before you have to activate your Turbulence. That's quite nice, because then you are protected against more stuff. Obviously, you also are protected against Nibiru at this point. Ash doesn't matter, it can't be ashed, but it can be, as I already said, Effect Veilered. Opponent could also like Ghost, not Ghost Spell, the other one, Ghost Ogre, the one that destroys this, could destroy this, and that might be a problem if you only have this one on the field. Who knows? But the Appaloosa is very, very nice. And now let's hop over into some test hands so we can see some real situations that could happen and how they could play out. Alright, let's look at this hand here. I have not thought about what we can do with this hand, but this hand looks like a good hand. Obviously, we have access to our wanted, which means that we have access to the basic Hydrant Turbulence thingy, but I'm thinking about whether we can also do something else, which we can also do something else here. So remember, this is basically the first thing I showed you in the first hand we did. You can just go wanted, DIABELLSTAR and all the other good stuff, but we can also just go, because we have the guy in hand here, we can also go the Ash. We can add then the Populous to the hand, Populous. So we obviously can't add the Hydrant because we have normal summoned the Ash. So we need to add the Populous, which then gets us into the Sinful Spoils here. We can now go make a free body. You don't have to do this, by the way. Always have to think about how do you want to do your line and how many summons does this need, because this is an extra summon and is closer to Nip then. Then we could go original Sinful Spoils, send away the guy and summon the Hydrant. And now we can special summon the Fire Engine, because the Rescue Ace monster was summoned. This would also have worked, obviously, if we would have had the Fire Attacker. Same thing, basically, would also have been able to summon. Now we can add the Turbulence, because otherwise we can't add it anymore. At this point, for example, this is the difference to the other lines. We can now here not add the Airlifter, because we don't have a normal summon left. Now we could send the Ash and this one away. We could go Flame Birch. I guess we won't end up on Flame Birch, so we are using him to could just do this for follow-up. Can use them, because we will send him away, and that's all right. We could, for example, set an Ash here as potential follow-up, or maybe as some fodder to send away for the Sinful Spoils. Now we can once again basically make, though this time around, I guess you should have not set the Ash then, because now we only have one level 1 body, and we will send this one to the grave, but then there's no fire monster that we can. Oh, we can the Flame Birch Dragon. Sorry, I was not thinking correctly here. You go this one because you need to have 2 level 1s, otherwise this cannot activate. So always keep that in mind. We also have the Rescue. I now realize the Rescue here, which can target one of our Rescue Ace monsters and revive it. Though we won't need it in this scenario, I think. Problem being here is that now we basically have to send them away. So what you could obviously do here once again is you could once again go for upper here to this one. Then you have an Appaloosa. You're basically safe for everything besides Imperm. Then you could use Turbulence, but you would need to banish your Fire Engine and Hydrant, so you can't re-access your Hydrant. Obviously, we have the Wanted here, which in this case would be. Let's play with the Wanted. Also, we can add the DIABELLSTAR. I just want an additional body. That's why I'm thinking about this. We do special summon. We can now. I want to keep. We discard the Rescue here, which I mean we would want this as an interruption, obviously. The DIABELLSTAR can now also set something. Though I guess you should have made the Appaloosa first here. But if you can just do a lot of things before you activate your Turbulence. So you are just safe in doing your most impactful play. So now we have one Rescue Ace card here in the grave. And we need another one. So this one has to go to the grave. And I think we are keeping the DIABELLSTAR because she can be resummoned when she leaves the field. So we get our Appaloosa here. You could also make a Appaloosa 4/4, but this can be problematic when your opponent activates the triple tactic talents, so that's something to think about. And now we can go for our Turbulence here. Turbulence, go and set, which we will only be able to set this one and another card, the Rescue here. And then we can also set the Extinguish, obviously. No, we have the Extinguish in hand, so we are setting this from our hand. Now we can also continue our plays. This is still a Promethean Princess line that we could go into, but we would then have to use our Rescue for the Hydrant. So in that case, so there are different lines here that you could do, right? You could also go for a Masquerina if you have a Unicorn left, maybe in the extra deck. We can just do the Princess line here, but keep in mind, if you do this, then you will have to use your rescue on the Hydrant that will be in your grave, because otherwise the traps ain't live, right? You could also keep them on the field, and then your traps are live, but you won't have the Promethean Princess interruption here. And then there are different things that you could do right here. You could have left this in the graveyard and now resummoned it with the Princess, so you can summon this out on your opponent's turn. But what you can also do is just climb one link higher. You should always do this here, by the way, summon the Hydrant, because if anything happens, you have the card on the field that is most important. And then just go into the Ambler here, and now you have the additional interruption of the Princess in the grave, destroying the Ambler Whale, destroying one card of your opponents, and then the Ambler Whale can also resummon the Sunlight Wolf, which, funnily enough, this can resummon the Sunlight Wolf in the zone under the Appaloosa. And if you then activate the... oh no, it would have been the other way around, right? I have to read this. If a Fire monster is normal special... Ah, okay, so this one works, sorry. But you will get the Sunlight Wolf back, which obviously is link material that you can use on the next turn, for example, for an Access Code Talker. So think about whether you want to go this Princess activation line here, or whether you want to keep your Turbulence and Hydrant on the field. So next turn, we can just quickly think about this. Next turn, we would then go Rescue to get the Hydrant back to the field so we can activate all the traps, right? In the other example, we would have kept the Hydrant on the field. That would have meant we wouldn't have the Amphibious here, we wouldn't have the Princess engrave, but we would still have the rescue, which we could use to interrupt our opponent's grave with. So something to think about. I think the Promethean line is a bit better here, all in all, but this you can up on, or you could up on with the hand we just looked at, basically. Okay, I couldn't get the setup for the perfect knit I wanted, but for the sake of this video, of this combo line, because this is the Turbulence discard line that I want to show you, but let's just imagine this here would not be a 1-for-1, but this would be a Snake Eye Ash. We will get the Snake Eye Ash with this in a moment, discarding this to get a Snake Eye Ash. This makes the difference that we would need to normal summon the Snake Eye Ash, because there was no 1-for-1. This was just a Snake Eye Ash normal summon in our hand, right? Obviously the 1-for-1 is the complete combo that I just showed you, but just imagine this was not 1-for-1, but Snake Eye Ash normal summon. So we go Snake Eye Ash normal summon, we go at the Populous, and then we go Populous effect. Then we go activate Populous. This will most likely only work if you have Snake Eye Ash access, because you need 3 bodies for this. You might also have another card, maybe a Rescue Ace card in hand that you can summon somehow, but for this you need 3 bodies. You go link away this into the Linkuribo, then you go Original Sinfuls. Yeah, we will set this, sure. Of course. And then we can go this one. So if you have another Rescue Ace card in hand, this would also work with a different setup. We will summon this one, because then you could now summon the Rescue Ace card from the hand. With this now, remember we don't have a normal summon left, because this was Snake Eye Ash here. We can obviously search something now. Doesn't really matter, because none of these we can just summon. So I guess Impulse is just the best one in this situation here. So obviously what we can do now is we can go Blocker. We will use these here. So this is the play I talked about in the beginning of the video, so I wanted to show you this. We can activate this now, discarding our Turbulence. And now, as you can see, Turbulence is engrave, we have the Hydrant engrave. Obviously what you could do now is go into big. No, you can't go into big, actually. So what you could have done before is use the Snake Eye Ash to send, for example, the Linguribo away, go into the Snake Eyes from Birch Dragon, then go into this one and have an extra body here. For the sake of what I want to show you here is not really relevant, because you just need these bodies, or use these bodies here to go into the Promethean Princess. This is the line I've talked about with the discard. Just resummoning your Turbulence here, and then Turbulence, as we already know, will set these cards. And then you can also, so you set this. And in this scenario, it's definitely better to just use these 2 here for the link summon of the Ambler Whale, because we will not get a hydrant, or we will get a hydrant actually. So forget what I'm saying. We have a hydrant here. Okay, so we will go Amblo Whale. Once again, you can decide, or you can't decide because you have to revive the. Okay, no, sorry guys. This is the best scenario, right? You go Amblo Whale, and then on your opponent's turn, you would go same as before. Activate the rescue, rescuing the hydrant. Now all of your nice effects are live. Though your hydrant is not protected, keep that in mind. You might have to stop your opponent from attacking over it with one of these. And obviously now you have your Princess Engrave, you have your traps live, you could use the alert. The alert would make sense to use here to add an input if you don't have one already, because the inputs could be used to summon more Rescue Ace cards to the field that protect your hydrant, right? So this is the board that you could end up on with just like a normal Summon Snake Ash plus and Turbulence. This is basically the idea of discarding the Turbulence, reviving it with a Promethean Princess. As you can see, it's not that hard to access the Turbulence, but this is the main play that you want to do on your first turn. So this is basically the end of the video. I think I've talked about everything that I wanted to talk about. Let me know in the comments if you have any further questions. I will be happy to answer them there. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please consider subscribing, hitting a thumbs up and the notification bell. I love making these guide videos. I hope they help, and we will see each other in the next one. Have a great time with Rescue Ace on the ladder.